Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone, to today's LinkedIn Live, Mastering Temperature Control Shipping to Ignite Grilling Season. Thanks, everyone, for being here with us today. My name is Brian Blaylock. I'm the host and director of client development for Blue Grace Logistics. It is my absolute pleasure to have a true legendary grill master, Jonathan Swart, our senior director of sales and company guru on refrigerated freight, joining us to lead the conversation today. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. So we'll jump right in it. Jonathan, we know shipping fresh products, particularly meat, requires a high attention to maintaining optimal temperature. Talk to us about some of the risk when that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and particularly to fresh protein, I think we'll focus on most of today, right? That's the most sensitive as we approach the summer heat and all things associated. If you have a load with a temperature variance in transit, not only are you at risk of damaging the relationship with that consignee or final customer, you're obviously going to have a loss of that sale and that product. And ultimately, this is one of the big reasons why FSMA exists, and also some of the FDA regulations around people can get sick, right? You never want to be the one responsible delivering something that could have been adulterated or had a temperature issue, and causing people to get ill or even worse. So making sure that everybody understands the temp requirements of fresh protein. There's a lot of implications and a lot at risk when you're handling this type of product.
Absolutely. And before we start talking about the product in transit, Jonathan, let's talk about some of the steps that are taken first, whether it's packaging, storage, planning, or anything else that puts us in a better position for success.
Yeah, I think, that can be highly variable based on the type of fresh protein that you're dealing with, whether it be fresh beef, pork, poultry. I think one of the big things is making sure that the drivers understand what those temp requirements are. Those instructions are very clear. But when dealing with fresh protein, sometimes you're at locations that have limited cold storage, or the customer product is being produced that day. So making sure that product gets down to optimal temperature before it's loaded on the truck. I think a lot of loading facilities don't want drivers or carrier personnel pulping the product, but we found that many of the customers and loading facilities are more than willing to do that, just to ensure that the product is being loaded at the optimal temp. And if there's anything special about that product, whether it's a load of combos, retail pack, understanding what that optimal temperature should be prior to loading it on the truck, I think is one of the biggest areas that we see temperature variances in transit. All from what comes off of the dock, right? Making sure that trailers are designed to maintain temperature in transit. Making sure that product is down to temperature prior to it being loaded. And even if one pallet has some heat left in it, it's going to affect the performance of temperature, and it's not going to be optimal cold chain throughout the trip.
Jonathan, you talked about the product being prepared properly in that temperature when it's picked up. So talk to us a little bit about the driver's responsibility in pre-temping those trailers to make sure that we do keep that consistent.
Yeah, especially as we're approaching the summer months, I think it's pretty fitting for this conversation. You're going to get a lot of road heat. Ambient temperatures being up are going to put more stress on that trailer. So making sure that you have a good, solid pre-cool is definitely going to help maintain temperature through transit. If you think about riding through the blacktop in Arizona or West Texas right now, yeah, the ambient temp might be 100, 105 degrees, but the heat coming off of the road and what that trailer is exposed to might get up to 130, 140. So making sure that you're removing the heat from the walls, the floor, you're down to an optimal temp, so that when that product is loaded at the appropriate temp, the trailer has all the ability to maintain cold chain through transit and to final consignee.
And Jonathan, I know that my temperature gauge has to be wrong, because I was pretty sure it was about 3 million degrees as I was driving in today. So I'm sure the drivers have a little work to do to make sure they're fine. But talk about, I know there's differences in between the types of protein and the types of temperatures that are required for each. And I won't make you lay out every possible thing on the menu, but talk to us about some of the different temperature requirements there may be for different types of protein.
Yeah. So I'll go back to the example of a combos going for further processing, or a retail ready, depending on the production cycle, where that load is destined, how fast it needs to get there, or what those specific needs are. You might say, well, that's a load of fresh. Does that, is that a load of combos going for further processing and it needs to run a little cooler at 26 degrees continuous, or is this retail ready, beef that needs to ride at 28 degrees? Also very specific to the protein industry. There's oftentimes, specifically with fresh beef, that there's both frozen and fresh product on a load. So understanding, what those temp requirements and settings that the shipper wants between consignees, between stops, to make sure that you are able to hold ideal temperature and good adherence to cold chain through transit. We look for our shippers and our shippers specifically, lay out the temp requirements for the drivers checking in and out. Drivers, depending on what you do over the road or regional, every single load is a little bit different. So just making sure that the instructions are very clear and documented on the bill of lading as well is always a big help to making sure that we're handling temperature appropriately.
And I think that's extremely important for how we manage the drivers and some of those pieces. But the piece that can be controlled by the supplier themselves, what are some of the things that they can do to take the initiative to make sure that, and I think I kind of know where one of your answers is going to go on this, but talk about where some of their responsibility is and how they can participate in making sure that all this happens.
Yeah. So I think, when all the way from, aligning with the supplier that they're choosing to use, whether a 3PL or asset direct relationship, making sure that that personnel that is dispatching and handling and, the appropriate, steps are in place internally for that supplier to make sure that drivers are prepared as they're showing up. One of the things that, you talk to some shippers and they'll say, well, hey, when a driver shows up and he doesn't have instructions, it backs us up, it holds up the driver. So making sure that those suppliers understand the unique requirements of every single SKU, maybe not every single, but the vast majority, or at least that loading location, what they're typically doing. And then, all the way till the time that the driver checks in, making sure that the trailer is at the appropriate temperature, the driver understands what type of load that they are getting, or if they're picking up a drop trailer, to make sure that the temp is running appropriately. So, and that's loading. And then obviously on checkout, making sure that, on that checkout process, there is a yes, hey, everybody understands the temp requirements. Here's the specific instructions. This is where it can be located on your BOL in case there's any questions. But, I would say it's that communication and over communication piece, and everybody involved in that transaction, and especially during implementation or change in lane or new drivers, et cetera, that becomes very important.
Yeah, that last word, Jonathan, is where I knew you were going to wind up, because I know you and your team and the over communication you require from us, and it's good to make sure that all parties involved in cold chain understand the need for over communication. Right? It's not going to hurt you to know more.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, let's move it out of the world of the supplier for a minute. Kind of come back to our world as a transportation management provider. Talk to us about how we can manage some of these complexities using maybe some of the technology that's out there, or even just strategy, Jonathan.
Mm-hmm. So I think back to your point, right? It's the communication and what we're doing on the front end of implementing that customer, that lane, that specific product, understanding what the expectations for cold chain are. If there's a program in place for remote monitoring, whether it be managed by Blue Grace, a third party, the customer or the shipper themselves, making sure that that data becomes actionable. So if we are alerted to a temperature deviation in transit, understanding what type of product is on the truck, what that immediate resolution is going to be, and what that escalation should be in transit, right? The last thing that we as a provider want to do is arrange for transportation of a load that we may or may not understand what that exact deviation or temperature variance would have been. So making sure that we're catching that stuff proactively, I think, is the biggest thing. So, perform maintenance, quality of trailer, all those types of things play a big role into executing this successfully and making sure that we're delivering on time, safely, and within temperature. And I think, one of the other there's a lot of technology in the marketplace. We as Blue Grace have definitely adopted it, trying to push that in the industry to make sure that visibility is there is a big thing, specifically when it comes to highly temperature sensitive commodities.
That's a great point. And Jonathan, we usually try to have a little bit of fun with these, so I'm going to take you off script a little bit and get into just a couple things. I did see a few questions pop in. Feel free to, guys, put as many in as you want. We'll make sure that either Jonathan or myself, if it's about today's topic, it's going to be Jonathan. I'm going to let you in on the spoiler on that. We'll reach out to you after we finish the meeting today, make sure any questions get answered. So thank you for that, Ryan. I see your question there. Jonathan, on the fun side of today, the really important stuff, we're talking about grilling season. So favorite cut of meat, favorite cut of steak.
That's a tough one. It's going to be, I'm probably going to go with a ribeye cap. Little bit specific, but if you got yourself a quality butcher, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Perfect. I like it. I won't say what mine is because I'm a steak wimp. But we will go for the real important stuff now. Best cookout tune.
Might be a little bit not exactly popular opinion, but I'm gonna go with Beyonce's cover of Jolene. I don't know, for some reason it's been stuck in my head, and she's got Dolly Parton on there as a prelude, so I'm about it.
Okay, I like it. That covers both of our generations, Jonathan, mine and yours. We can go
That's
back
right.
to school with the Dolly version. I like it. Okay, I'm going to have to check that out if we finish today.
I got some gray hair now, Brian. So
creeping in. Listen, if I had any, I'd be happy. But I see that. I see a couple of other recommendations coming in. Thank you for that. So, listen, we appreciate so much everyone coming in today. I'm going to wrap this here in just a minute. But Jonathan, before I do, I've got one more fun thing to talk about. I'm going to set that aside for just 1 second. But Jonathan, I just wanted you to kind of put a bow around today. And if there's any last tips or any last pieces you want to make sure we leave everyone with, I want to do that real quick. And then I got one more fun thing, and we're going to shut it down and give you back your time.
Somebody that I've worked with a lot in this industry, I'm gonna steal it from her, but she would say communication is king and it's free. And so I think solid communication and alignment, especially when dealing with sensitive commodities, is definitely the way to go, or the way to approach those situations. And it's always acting in the best interest of the product and making sure that whether shipper, 3PL, motor carrier, that you're aligned with partners that understand the urgency around this type of product or in this space. Because if everybody in that transaction is aligned on those things, everybody knows what to do and what their responsibilities are. And it's really, we want to get freight delivered to everybody's customers on time, in full, and within temperature, all while doing it safely and making sure everybody is in the loop on what's going on.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, communication, our industry in general, that's always the best piece of advice, but particularly in this part of the world, I mean, we have to make sure that there is, I loved your earlier version, over communication. Let's keep that going. So thanks everybody for being here today. I did want to share with you that we have a Logistics Heroes comic series from Blue Grace. It's a very cool thing. Make sure that you share it with your folks. The newest edition here, let me see if I can center that up, Temperature Guardians, which discusses protein in peril, which if you talk to Mr. Swart and his team, we'll make sure that doesn't happen. Feel free. There's going to be a QR code that pops up on your screen here in a minute. Be sure to scan that in, get your copy of that, read through some of the others. It's just a nice, fun way to be able to remind yourself of some things that are important and have a little fun along the way. Pretty decent collector's item. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. This is our way to be able to communicate with you, learn from you, try to share some things with you, and we hope we see you the next time. Jonathan, as always, thank you so much, my friend. Great job, and I appreciate all that you share with us and all that I learned from you today.
Thanks, Brian.